Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Stand Up Speakeasy. My name is Srethney, and every episode of the Stand Up Speakeasy, I bring on a guest from the Central Time Zone because I was hoping to go on tour, as you already know, from almost 50 episodes of these in, and I wanted to interview comics from Middle America, and that didn't happen because of COVID. But I'm glad to say that I can do these from home now, and I don't have to waste any gas. But I'm gonna miss going out on tour. But maybe in the future I'll go on tour. Who knows? But coming all the way from St. Louis, I'll bring on Meredith Hopping. Hey, Meredith, how are you?
Hi. Yeah, thank you for having
Indeed, I
me.
got you. You're welcome. All this live stuff is like there's so many technical glitches along
Oh
the
my
way, but you know
goodness,
what?
it's insane.
It's all good. Indeed. So Meredith, I was looking through your bio and you performed stand up about 3.5 years ago,
Mhm.
and you took a really big step, it says, because you were a size 13. So what was those early years like?
So I first tried stand up. It was 2017. I had just had my third child and had horrible postpartum depression, and Trump had just been inaugurated, and that was fueling the depression. I guess I didn't ask if we're allowed to talk politics at all, but
You're fine.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Um, so I wanted to do something tangible where I would do something, and if the audience didn't laugh, like it was just on me, right? Like I was in control of it, and there was going to be no one else to blame but myself if it didn't go well. And I really loved that because I am a bit of a control freak. And so I did. And when I got my first laugh, I was just like, yep, I was supposed to do this. I am made to do this, and I can't do anything else. So it has been just an amazing thing to find your calling, I guess, in your 30s, which I think our world and specifically American society really likes to claim that that doesn't happen, that you've got to have it figured out in undergrad or even high school so that you go to the right undergrad. And so I've just been extremely thankful that I found this thing that brings me so much joy, and that before the pandemic, I was actually paying rent with. And so fingers crossed that comes back again. But yeah, so it's been an amazing journey. And especially if you know anything about the St. Louis comedy scene, it kind of gets the reputation of being too nice because we won't necessarily tell someone when they're not good at it. And so it's super supportive. And yet I've made sure to find a couple people at least who will like tell me the truth about if I bomb or not. But as a comic, you know this, like you know. If you don't, those people that are delusional who are like not good at all, but really believe they're good. I am always in amazement of that. I'm like, what is your secret? And it isn't always white males, but more often than not, it is. So, yeah, it's been a wonderful 3.5 years, and I think I've been able to do a lot in this time because I've really employed the fake it till you make it. And so like my first showcase, my first time doing anything other than an open mic, I was only about 2 months in, and I got asked to be on a showcase, and I didn't know anything really about how everything worked. And they asked me how much time I had, and I had only ever heard people talk about doing showcases and doing 20 minutes. And so I said 20 minutes, even though I had 4 minutes, and forced myself to write 16 more minutes and did a 20-minute set. And so out of that, I then had like 3 more 4-minute chunks, you know what I mean, that I could try out at open mics. So I know most people would not recommend that, but for me, it worked out.
Indeed, most definitely. And so, you're also you incorporate like I myself. I'm like a tell my story on stage. So you do the same. Which you incorporate your family and
Yeah.
your exes and all that stuff and
Yeah.
all that craziness. And my family's crazy too. And so it's like, what made you go that route instead of being a topical humor kind of
I
comic?
mean, I definitely weave in topical humor. I'm never going to be like a one-liner because I'm a storyteller. That's my biggest problem, I think, with doing stand up is I have to edit down because I want to describe something so that anyone listening can feel all the things exactly as I felt them. And that doesn't always work in stand up. You've got to get to the punchline eventually. And so I knew, having such an interesting background in childhood with being the granddaughter, daughter, ex-wife of pastors and being 6 feet tall by sixth grade and lanky and being made fun of so much. When the thing that I love about stand-up is one of the like superpowers, if you will, we were chatting about superheroes a little bit before the show, is that no one else can be you. Like that's literally where the most authentic content comes from, is who you are and your experience. And it also in a way can redeem so many of those things that were uh so hurtful growing up. I would get made fun of every day in junior high as I took my lunch tray up, and a whole table full of junior high boys would chant lurch at me. Um, and so while that was super damaging, like now I get to go on stage and people are laughing with me about it. And it's super redemptive. And I love that about stand up.
Indeed, I can. Some children can be mean, but I'm glad you take all the flaws, and then you turn it into jokes, and that's what I love to do too. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not the handsomest person on, but I'm gonna make you laugh your butt off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, indeed. So, you've also been to Flyover Comedy Festival, and what was it like performing at the festival?
So Flyover Comedy Festival is a festival here in St. Louis, and what I loved so much about it is
So,
just the interaction. Oh, are we cutting out a little? Can you hear me? No? Let me see
just a
here.
little. It might be the rain from outside, and
Oh,
that's what happens in like the Panhandle too. That I noticed.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you, but sometimes it just cuts out a little bit here and there.
Okay.
If you'd like, are you you can try using your phone if it's your Wi-Fi,
Okay.
because sometimes that might work too.
Yeah.
So
Let me try that.
okay, so I think, but yeah, it's freezing just a little bit, but but how was flyover?
Yeah, so are we back to normal? I'm gonna try to get on this. Let's see.
Let's see here. Okay, so while we're waiting to switch over to the 5G network instead of Wi-Fi because of the rain, I wanted to remind everyone at home to follow Meredith on all the fine social platforms that are out there that's scrolling on the right, and donate.
Let's see here.
Indeed, definitely. Yeah, sometimes on the phones for some reason. Those 5G technologies and all that stuff. So who knows? But
Hello.
yep, there's PayPal, Venmo, and all that good stuff. So donate to Meredith if you can, since some comics are out of work due to COVID, and comic clubs are closed down. So trying to hook up the comics with as much funds as possible. You're totally fine. There we are. See if this one works. And for yeah, it's been a little odd, but we got to call the Rain Man and see if he can simmer down on the rain. But Meredith, are you is everything all good?
No.
You're much better now on that. I can see it's a much better signal.
Let's see here.
But as we mentioned earlier in our earlier episodes, it's live. So, but it's I won't edit it because it's just like it is what it is, and imperfections are perfect.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Can you hear me now?
yep,
Yay! I think we're
awesome.
back.
Indeed, most definitely. So Meredith, so what was the flyover like?
Yes, it was wonderful. It is here in St. Louis. I can't wait for it to come back again after COVID. It was amazing to be able to interact with so many different comedians from all over the country. I think that's one of my favorite things is just the community that exists outside of your own little bubble in your city. And especially now, while COVID has wreaked so much havoc, I think one of the really beautiful things that has happened is that we're able to do things like this interview, and that when I have a Zoom show, I'm able to be on a Zoom show with people from LA and people from Chicago and people from New York City all at the same time. And so the strengthening of the comedy community is pretty wonderful.
Indeed. Yep, and all this time we were thinking about all the bad things that COVID did to us, but we rose above it as comics,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty
Yeah.
awesome. So,
Yeah.
indeed, and so you're also a regular at the Helium Comedy Club, and I hear about that place all the time. So it's pretty all the way down in Florida. So what's it like performing in Helium Comedy Club in St. Louis?
Yeah, Helium is amazing. I was really lucky because my first club weekend, I was opening for Nicole Byer, and who's the host of Nailed It on Netflix, and just an amazing person and comic. And so it was, I mean, sold out crowds of over 300 people, and it was so awesome. As a comic, what it's like to have a full room and people that are just ready to laugh, and actually they're intentionally to laugh and not just an open mic when it's all comics in the audience. And so Helium is just a great place to work. I got to open for Mark Normand in November as well, and they've done an amazing job pivoting there with all the COVID restrictions, and they're really doing social distancing and sanitizing and keeping everything safe really, really well.
Indeed, most definitely. And you also performed all over venues across the Midwest too. And what are your favorite venues across the Midwest?
Absolutely. I think Jukebox Comedy Club in Peoria, um, Illinois, is one of my absolute favorites. Dan Conlon is the owner there, and he that club has been open for 30 years, I think, which is a really big deal for an independent comedy club to be open that long. And it is a place that always has an audience that wants to be super supportive of you and their staff and the comics there. I'm consistently amazed at the hospitality that they have. And so I wish more people, there's actually a GoFundMe for Jukebox right now because, like many venues all over the country, they are struggling, and especially Illinois has some pretty intense COVID restrictions, and so they're not able to be open right now. And so that's a really hard reality where I think people don't get that not wearing masks, not taking this seriously, it's impacting so much more than people are realizing. And I just wish we could get it together and care about one another, so we could get this over with. And yeah.
Yep, and COVID's almost 1 year old, and yet still people don't wear those masks. It's like, all right, we'll have to wear masks for the rest of our lives then.
Right. There, I think about babies that have been born in this time, and that they're going to understand people's faces as having masks. Like, that's the only reality they've known. And that's crazy. It's so crazy to me.
Indeed. You spoke of how you felt opening for Nicole Byer, and what was it like opening for Mark Normand?
Oh, he's so wonderful. He does a really good job. His writing is amazing, and he's so kind. You know, Nicole Byer, she actually had Sashir Zamata come and hang out with her because they're best friends. And so they were commenting on, like, oh, you like, you know how to act, like, in a green room. You're not like asking us tons of questions. And like, because I'm like, you guys have to be tired. Like, you've had a crazy year and all this stuff. And my kids really wanted to meet Nicole Byer because they love Nailed It. And I made the decision, like, no, they can just like know that mommy did this. They don't need to meet her because that's not really Nicole's job. You know what I mean? To meet kids and have to entertain kids. And I don't think people realize that about performers, that performers get tired and have really hectic schedules with the traveling. And so Mark Normand too is just a joy. Actually listened to my set, actually gave me feedback, and that's always a really wonderful thing when a headliner is willing to do that.
Indeed, he was recently here at the Sound Bar, I believe, in Orlando, but I didn't get to catch up.
Yeah.
But I was doing something else. But I hear he's a great guy, and I've seen his videos on YouTube. Good stuff, most definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you also have a bi-weekly comedy show called the Hump Day Happy Hour on Facebook Live, and we
Yeah.
spoke briefly about it with all the comics from different parts of the country. And how did you get that started, and what's the story
So
behind
that
Hump Day
actually
Happy Hour?
just started last night, was the premiere show. And mostly I was talking to my boyfriend, and I was just like, I haven't written in forever because I really write for shows. Like, I like to write when I know I have a performance coming up. And I was just like, oh, I need to stop whining about this and just do it. Like, we're in an age and time with technology that we can just start a show on Zoom and have people on. And I'm keeping it to an hour, just from 6 to 7, just so that it's not a huge commitment for people, so that people can just, so that comments can just jump on and try out some new stuff, and we can all have some conversation, and just truly a happy hour thing, just um a brief little thing to try to get you through the rest of your week.
Indeed, most definitely. And
Yeah.
so you decided to raise funds for this St. Louis STL safe house for women. Why did you pick those fine folks to raise funds for?
I think it's just a really important thing. We've seen during COVID the rise of domestic violence and abuse, and the idea that some people don't have anywhere to go when that happens is really heartbreaking and sobering. And not only has that risen, but also people being able to give funds to nonprofits has gone down because of the reality of so many people losing their jobs. And so I think it's just vital that our nonprofits that provide services such as these really get bolstered, and that if we do have anything to spare, a lot of people have said, oh, I don't need my stimulus. What can I do with it? And I love that mindset. I love that people are thinking like, oh, how can I pay this forward instead of just hoarding it? So they're a very important organization to me because of what they provide and the safe place that they provide.
Most definitely, indeed. And so the link's on the bottom there, scrolling. It's also, I believe, in the description box below. So feel free to donate
Mm-hmm.
to those fine folks at the STL Women's Safe House, and donate to Meredith during all this stuff too, if you want to, and Cash App and PayPal, and follow on Instagram and Twitter, which is the name tag that Meredith has, and like Hump Day Happy Hour on Facebook as well. And when I was going to go on tour, I wanted to ask you these questions, because I asked the questions. When I interview comics, I ask these questions to all of them that I've ever
Okay. Yeah.
interviewed. So Meredith, we talked about what your inspirations was. So for those that are just jumping in now, what inspired you to perform stand up comedy?
Yes, absolutely. So I had horrible postpartum depression and wanted to do something that would make people laugh, but also that if I didn't do a good job, I would have no one to blame but myself. So people often say, like, oh, you could have started an improv. And I'm like, no, there's no way I could have started an improv, because then there's a lot of people to blame other than myself. So once I did that first open mic, I was absolutely hooked.
Indeed. And what was it feeling like when you first performed stand up?
I'm sorry,
The feeling like when you first performed stand up.
the show like?
What was it feeling like?
The feeling
Like,
like, oh, it was I've never done hard drugs, but I imagine it was exhilarating and the best feeling I've ever had, probably, other than holding my newborn children. So pretty good.
absolutely. I never touched hard drugs other. I stopped at marijuana, and I'm like, that's it. I don't like this feeling. I'm not going to do anything else.
That's not a drug, that's medicine.
Oh, indeed. Well, we'll say Tylenol then. Tylenol is so. Indeed. And what your favorite comedy specials and comedy record albums?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, a favorite? That's so, in the age of streaming, it's so hard to pick a favorite right now. I'm definitely influenced by Sarah Silverman. Um, she's just like OG, like, and I love how outspoken she is and how she does not ever back away from her convictions. I really appreciate that. I am also really influenced by some older comics, like Carol Burnett was and is a huge influence of mine. Just the ability to do ridiculous, outlandish things to make people laugh. I think that is that's just one of the most fun things ever, to surprise people. And I like doing that when I'm on stage by talking about things that are perfectly normal that everyone experiences, but that we consider taboo. And like, no, you don't talk about that in public. You don't talk about that at the dinner table. Well, maybe we should. And so those are the topics I like to bring up when I'm doing stand up.
Indeed. And so a lot of those folks have been on TV and film, and I want to know what your favorite sitcom, sketch shows, and comedy films are.
Favorite sitcom. I do love Crashing on HBO, which is Pete Holmes. show, and there are some nods to growing up in the church and all that culture, and then doing stand-up. So obviously I'm a big fan of that because a lot of it hits home. My favorite sitcom is, what would I say? One that I can watch over and over again. I do love Sex in the City, and I know that's problematic, and I understand that, and I can watch it with fresh eyes. Apparently, they're bringing it back, which they should not do. I don't think that's a good idea at all. In a time when white women aren't really doing too well, anyways, with everything, maybe we don't bring back that show. But I do love it because it was happening, as I was in high school. So just at that time, it was very groundbreaking. And so I love that one. As far as more serious, I really love The Leftovers, which was on HBO. It's a very important show to be watching right now because it deals with super traumatic things happening on a global level, and that there's still hope and beauty even in the midst of those things. And so while it's super intense, it's a really important watch right now. What else did you ask me? Oh, I Think You Should Leave on Netflix is ridiculous and wonderful, and I suggest it to everyone, and the people who get it are very thankful that I suggested it, and the people who don't are like, I mean, we knew that there was something wrong with you, but now we really know there's something wrong with you. So yeah, I Think You Should Leave is one I can go back to over and over again and just like find some new ridiculous detail to laugh about.
Indeed. And comedy films?
Comedy films. Bridesmaids still holds up for me, can make me laugh so hard no matter what. Knocked Up is another one that I really find funny. I'm trying to think of what recently. It's been so long since we've been able to be in the theaters that too has really dropped. But I would say those are two of my favorite comedy films. Young Frankenstein also is anything Mel Brooks is pretty yeah, you can't go wrong.
Indeed. And if you can go on tour with any comedian locally and internationally known, which comedians would you like to go on tour with?
Oh my goodness. So any comedian local? I would have to say probably Libby Higgins. She's an amazing comic here out of St. Louis. If you don't follow her, you should. She went viral with a YouTube video called "Mxcuse Me," which is about her ordering the McRib and from McDonald's. And so I would highly recommend everyone follow her. She makes me laugh hysterically and is so much fun and so kind. And when I started stand-up comedy, I had a cousin who, when she saw that I was doing a show that Libby was on, freaked out and thought like Meredith really made it, because she knew Libby before I had even started doing stand-up and had been following her. So she is an amazing comic that I would love spending a crazy amount of time with. And then nationally, probably Pete Holmes. His style I really connect with, and his background. And yeah, it would be really fun to just be able to connect and pick his mind. So yeah.
Indeed. And if you get roasted by 5 comedians, past and present, which comedians would you like to get roasted by?
I like to get roasted by. Oh my gosh. So Nikki Glazer is an amazing roaster. She's also a St. Louis girl. So have to shout her out. So her, let's see who else. George Carlin. Right. Like, let's just go for it and get it. I have, a friend, Nathan Orton, who's a comedian who used to be in St. Louis. He's in New York now, and he's amazing at roast battles. And so I know he'd rip me apart. He once roasted my mom at a show because she had on oxygen,
and had her oxygen tank with her. And for that, he's one of her favorite comics ever, because he roasted her for needing oxygen. Let's see, I've got two more, right? I think Nicole Byer, because she's so ridiculously silly and would get at me. Who else? I mean, probably just to be in the same room and around him, Dave Chappelle. So, yeah.
Indeed. Great stuff. And what do you see your comedy career in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I am really hoping to tour more, obviously, right? That's the standard answer. I have a project I'm working on with a friend of mine called Homespun Sisters that we're going to start doing a web series of, that I'm really excited about, where we are fundamentalist Christian women and our husbands have died. And so now we have to set up adult field trips for ourselves to learn about the world. And so it's pretty ridiculous. And yet Alexis is also the daughter of a pastor. And so we're able to use all that knowledge to help with our comedy. And it's a really fun, ridiculous thing. And so I'm excited for where that is going. And I'm excited. I was actually planning on recording my first hour this year at a venue in Bloomington Normal, Illinois, which is where I'm from. And obviously that is not really an opportunity. So, but I'm excited for to just kind of do the trajectory and the stair steps that we do in this business, and to see what comes next.
Indeed. And what other forms of comedy would I venture off into? We talked about improv, but improv is not as out of the question. But sketch, comedy writing, acting, directing, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's interesting is my friend Alexis, who I do Homespun Sisters with, she is like a queen of improv and sketch, and is one of the most talented character actors I've ever encountered in my life. And so she's done a really good job with helping me as we filmed little bits and pieces for our Homespun Sisters project, to really let myself go and actually try some improv and try some riffing. And so definitely I've always loved writing, but as I used to be a pastor myself and would preach quite a bit. And so I'm excited to write more and weave in my stand-up and the comedy, but also my faith is really important to me. And I think those two things can coincide really well and be really beautiful.
Indeed, most definitely. And what is your favorite joke a comic's ever written?
Favorite joke a comic's ever written? So there's a joke that a comic here in St. Louis, Spencer Tegmeyer is his name, and he's very much a one-liner comedian. And I don't know that he had this intention when he wrote the joke, but it is one of my favorite jokes in how it turns the light on the audience and shows a really interesting truth. Because the joke is, so, hey, did you hear the one about the woman that got attacked on the subway? I guess you could say she was raped. Like, rape jokes, yeah, super problematic, right? Except the thing is, until he says rape, the audience is ready to laugh. And are like, what? No, we haven't heard the one about the woman getting attacked on the subway. Like, what? Why are we okay with it until we actually call it what it is? And so I'm like, do you realize you've written a very feminist joke? And he's just like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's really brilliant in what it does. And so I know it's really weird to have like a rape joke be my favorite joke. And yet, because it inadvertently calls out how comfortable we are, especially in the comedy scene, with rape culture, right? With with objectifying women, I think it's a really brilliant joke.
It's quite intense for sure. It really is.
Sorry.
It's okay. Most definitely. And so what experience would you like your audience to take with them after a set is over?
I thought you were going to say after that joke. I'm like, well, the moral of the story is don't laugh at women getting attacked on the subway. And donate to the Women's Safe House if you've ever laughed at that. There's the moral of the story. After a show, I think I want the audience to just take away, like, there is literally humor in everything we experience every single day, even the most horrible things, because we are humans and because there's humanity. Like, there's joy to be had. And I just hope when I get off the stage that people feel like they've seen something real, that they've seen something transparent, and that they also somehow feel more comfortable with themselves and their stories after seeing me.
Indeed. And Meredith, as Yale had recommended you for the show, for the stand-up speakeasy. The speakeasy is like the prohibition from the 1920s. It's the roaring 20s, if you will. And the only way in is if you nominate someone to join us into the club. So,
Okay,
as Yale nominated you, Meredith, which comics in St. Louis would you like to nominate for the show? Upcoming
absolutely.
show.
Well, I'm going to have to nominate my former show running partner and writing partner, Sam Lyons.
Indeed. And so I will have to have you help me out with the spelling, because sometimes my spelling's way off when it comes with people's names. So
Yeah.
And Meredith, I want everyone to like Hump Day Happy Hour, as mentioned earlier, and follow Meredith on Instagram and Twitter. Donate to her Cashapp, PayPal, and Venmo if you can, and donate to this St. Louis Women's Safe House if you can as well. And with that being said, Meredith, what are there any final words you'd like to give to the audience out there?
Final words: wear a mask and care about one another.
Indeed, fine words indeed, and just wear a mask and just keep everyone safe, will you, folks? It's not that hard. It really isn't.
No.
Indeed. And Meredith, thank you so much for being my guest on the Stand Up Speakeasy today. And I'll pick everything together. You're welcome. And I'll send it all your way as soon as I get everything all set up proper for you and make it cherry.
Awesome.
Indeed. Awesome. Thank you so much, Meredith. And thank you for everyone else that's watching at home and catching this later on YouTube. Be well, everyone, and wear a mask.
Bye.
Bye. Awesome.